Talking with Words.
Welcome back to Talking with Words. You're here with Rob,
Ryan,
and Adam.
And we are joined by Best Times author Jonathan Maberry. Best Times?
It's the New York Times.
Yeah, we'll get there. New York Times best-selling author Jonathan Maberry.
Hey,
Thank
guys.
you for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Oh, I'm happy to be back. You guys are fun. And you're three guys with beards and Hawaiian shirts. I mean, what's not to feel at home about, you know?
It's a Hawaiian day, right?
It is. It's always Hawaiian day around here, though.
So, newest novel is Burn to Shine, and this is the Joe Ledger. Yeah, there we go. We just got our copy that you signed with Ray Porter.
Nice.
Got it in. And
Yeah.
this was a lot for me, and as far as checking boxes of things I love. Going back to Pine Deep was fantastic. How is it? I mean, is that something that you always have in the back of your mind? You want to revisit that area?
Yeah, it's funny because after I did the original three Pine Deep novels, I moved away from that area. I did some short stories here and there, but it was the novel Ink that brought me back to Pine Deep. I knew I wanted to do a novel with my character Monk Addison, and I wanted the location to be innately creepy, and Pine Deep checks that box for me. So I did it there, and then having him there made me wonder who else I could bring there. So when I started plotting out Burn to Shine, I thought, well, you know, let's definitely go to Pine Deep, and let's bring all the guys in for a big brawl, and had a lot of fun with it. I had a whole lot of fun writing that book.
Yeah, it was a lot. That book crossed, I mean, like how many references to all of the other books, all the other characters. It made me want to go back and read the 12, 13 previous books because I was like, oh man, I forgot about this person, I forgot about that person. So, no spoilers, but I kind of halfway expected Galt to show up.
Yeah.
Yeah, Galt is actually dead. He and Hugo Vox are dead. They're not going to be able to come back. The main two villains of Burn to Shine. One, I have openly said that he is immortal, so he can come back. But the other one, the title kind of gives that away. Given that was her catchphrase, and for anyone who's into zombie lore, the way she was terminated in the previous book does not kill a zombie.
Right.
So she was
That
shot.
was fun to have her come back.
Shot twice in the chest. That won't kill a zombie.
Yeah, you can put a ton in the chest and have them fall off a balcony. That's still not going to do it.
You won't wake up right, but you'll wake up hungry, a little bitey.
Apparently.
And also the character of Toombs, Isaac Toomberland, he was in Cave 13, and I liked him so much. And Ray Porter, my audiobook reader, really loved that character. And his passion about the character made me kind of want to bring him back for another go around. And so that was fun. And a bunch of other characters. And that leads up to Red Empire, which will be out next year. And that will kind of wrap like a phase of Ledger's career. There are certain people that won't be returning anymore after that book. So, and I'm actually doing the final edit on that now.
I'm thinking about that hard right now for some reason, and I don't think that's going to end up well for some. Like,
for some, it's not going to end up well. I mean, it's true to say that not everyone gets out alive in that one, but it's also Mr. Church's origin story too.
All right.
There's even a possibility of a very popular movie character who might show up in that book. Had that discussion with Lionsgate Films yesterday, and my guess is, knock wood, I'm going to get permission for a certain very aggressive gunfighting action hero whose initials are JW to be in that.
Okay.
Ooh.
What else you got in your back pocket? That's like four amazing things back to back.
I got lots of stuff. I mean, there's some stuff that are just so much spoilers I can't drop it, but let's just say that would be fun, and it might be a license that I'm going to do some work with if everything goes well. So that's
would be awesome.
That leads into you told us about the John Wick bit. I can cut all that out, don't worry.
The series.
The series, yes.
Yeah.
him directing Ledger. Do we have anything?
Yeah, the guy. Well, actually, yeah, we're up to the point now where he is interviewing showrunners. And for those who are watching who don't know what a showrunner is, on TV, there is a group of writers who writes the show, and the showrunner is the person who kind of directs traffic, but also sets the vision for the show. And Chad Stahelski, who's the director of the John Wick films, is, he optioned the show. He's been a longtime fan of the Joe Ledger books, and he has made it very clear to any potential.
Fuck!
What happened?
I don't know. It just froze up and then it kicked us out. I don't know what happened there. Sorry about that.
For me, it just said stop recording, and that was the end of it. So
You were
one of the Wi-Fi issues.
mid dialogue. We were wrapped.
Well, what I was saying before we disappeared there was that Chad Stahelski said that he had no interest in making a Joe Ledger movie. He wanted to do it for TV because he wanted to keep all that character development in there. And the showrunners that he's talking to have to read the first couple of books to become familiar with that vibe. Because as far as Chad's concerned, it's all about the characters. The overarching, big plot of per book is less important to him and to me than the characters, what happens to them. So that was really great to hear from him.
So you're saying the showrunner has to read the first 3 novels before they can even
have a conversation with him. Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I like it.
That's
smart.
awesome.
Yeah, and we're talking a guy who's only directed 4 films, and they're the John Wick films, and every one was a huge hit. He just got John Wick 5 approved. He's got Ballerina coming up. He's doing the Highlander film now with Henry Cavill. He's got the clout to be able to make that kind of a demand and have it respected. So
That's gotta feel good.
yeah, kidding me? And he's also a martial arts guy like I am, and he's a pop culture nerd like I am. So we have a lot of great, fun conversations, just kind of, talking shop and, shooting shit about pop culture. And he's a Joe Ledger guy. He already has plans for how he's going to choreograph the fight scenes. He co-owns the number one stunt team in Hollywood, and they're all already getting ready to do the Joe Ledger stuff. So. Keep my fingers. I'm not counting my chickens or anything, but I'm just say that I'm aware of the chickens.
We'll cross them for you.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. So going into we were talking about the returning characters like Nicodemus himself, and then we had another character that we've only seen in Pine Deep before, which was Mr. Pockets. Could you expand on any with Mr. Pockets for us? Because
Mr. Pockets is kind of what I consider a stealth character in my series. He was in the Pine Deep books, and he was in a short story called Mr. Pockets that it kind of expanded, give you an idea of how powerful he was, because he meets a powerful vampire, and all that happens is that vampire becomes a tasty little treat, and that's it.
Yeah, you said expanded, and that's exactly what his jaw did.
Oh yeah,
Sorry.
Yes, he is the the second most powerful character in all of my books. And that includes Cthulhu, by the way. He's the second most powerful character. The first most powerful is the character of Vothnia, who is in the last Kagen the Dam book.
Yeah.
The god of all dragons, and dragons are the origin of magic in the universe. So he's definitely above everyone else. But Mr. Pockets is second. He just happens to be on Earth, but that's only because he's enjoying it.
I thought you were going to say ghost for a second, because you can't,
no,
you can't kill that dog. It's immortal. It's amazing.
Yeah. Let's just say that if Cthulhu and Mr. Pockets were in a fight, a second after that fight started, Mr. Pockets would be going out, picking stuff out of trash cans and enjoying himself. That'd be over. So he's a fun character. So when he tells a certain character to be gone, they're gonna hit the road.
Yeah. I've never seen somebody shit their pants that fast. That was impressive. And especially for somebody like that.
Yeah. So I had a lot of fun. It was actually the first scene in the book I wrote.
Okay.
That was the very first scene I wrote, because I wanted that to be where the book got to. And then the second scene I wrote was the very last scene in the book.
All right.
Which
Okay.
a lot of people are like, what now?
Yeah.
Some people think it confirms theories of theirs about the relationship between two characters, but just say I've got a few curves to throw when Red Empire comes out. Red Empire was originally known as The Alchemist, and my
Yeah.
publisher asked me for a name. The reason for that name change is that Paulo Coelho has a book called The Alchemist, and even though you can use the same titles, that book is required reading in so many schools around the world that it always dominates the search. So that Red Empire is a lot less commonly used. So my publisher asked me to do that, and it fits the next book anyway. It actually fits it even more closely than The Alchemist does as a title. So, and I love that book. The Alchemist is my favorite in the entire series, or Red Empire is my favorite in the entire series.
Wow.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely left.
Hopefully that's required reading in school pretty
Yeah.
soon. Screw the Alchemist. Red Empire.
There are schools where Joe Ledger is required reading. Some universities' writing programs, which kind of always freaks me out when I hear about stuff like that.
I was gonna say that's gotta feel like amazing and yet odd.
Yeah, and the fact that Rotten Ruin is required reading in over 8,000 schools around the world, there's no part of that sounds like I'm not on acid. But I don't do acid. I've got to accept that it's part of my reality and the royalties because it's required reading. Every year they all got to buy the book. So yeah,
That's awesome.
Doesn't suck.
Yeah. I definitely left this book with more questions than I thought I had ever solved over the Joe Ledger series in all the books through thinking of, church and finally figuring out some stuff about Nicodemus. No, now I've got way more questions than I had before.
Well, since I've spoken about this on a couple of podcasts and in interviews, I can, more openly say that Nicodemus is not a fallen angel. He's not the devil. He is an immortal trickster spirit. He has been alive since the world's been here. He's like Loki or Anansi or Coyote or any of the other cultural trickster characters. He is actually not evil. He is chaotic. And that was, I drilled into that a little bit in Burn to Shine with some of what he said to a couple of characters about his nature. He prefers chaos because chaos is when things happen, the unexpected and the dramatic happens. Order is when things become stale, as far as he sees it.
Yeah, I really dug that he kind of had that little poke at Prince of Games,
Yes.
for the other series, one of the other great series you have, Kagen.
And we're stopped again. Oh, you're back. Okay.
Okay.
There we are.
Yeah. So yes.
Yeah. There's the conversation he has in this book felt a lot like the conversation he had in Kagen, where
With Herapath.
I'm gonna switch the sides. If it's not fun anymore, this is getting too predictable. I'm gonna go. Which I love. You have that Joker quality to it of you don't know what's gonna come next.
Yeah, his next appearance will be interesting. It'll be a different one than people expect. Not that he's going to join, Rogue Team or anything, but just say that he is transitioning into another phase of his existence, and
Questions.
that'll be. Yeah. But we also get to see some of his backstory too.
Okay, awesome.
Going back to ancient Rome. So.
Okay.
He's like John Connor's best friend in the future, and now he's gone. No.
Well, I mean, he can't die, so he does show up in other books. But with my Necrotech series that I'm doing for Blackstone for the Weird Tales Presents imprint, in the second and third books, I actually introduce a connection to the Ledger series. I introduced the God Machine, which was in Kill Switch.
Yeah.
That device, and I've used it in a couple other stories. I had a short story I used it in, and called the Orpheus Gate, and it's definitely a big factor in books 2 and 3 of the Necrotech series. And who knows what else who else may cameo in that? We'll see. It's set about 150 years in the future, maybe 170 years in the future.
Yeah. Speaking of Necrotech, I just finished Sleeper Wars, and I felt some strong vibes between the two of them. But one thing I wanted to ask about is the HEs in one in the Humans Evolved. Are they based off of anything particular, like the Space Marine, like the Warhammer stuff, or anything like that? I get a strong vibe.
No, it's funny. I have never played or read any of the Warhammer stuff, though a lot of friends of mine tell me I'd love it. And that's a Danger Will Robinson moment for me because it's the reason I don't play video games. If I got involved in them, I would lose a lot of writing time.
Yeah.
I don't play RPGs for the same reason. I just would lose a lot of writing time. That said, the concept of forced evolution through cybernetics, genetic manipulation, and so on, is something I've been playing with for a couple of decades now with my fiction. It's been mentioned here and there, different things I've written. The Sleepers War book actually started out as a comic book. I was going to write it for a while back. IDW was run by Ted Adams with Chris Ryall and David Hedgecock all in place there, and they were going to try to launch a shared horror universe, kind of like the MCU and DCU. This would be all horror with original characters. It was going to be Joe Hill, Steve Niles, myself, and a couple others creating our own horror characters and then having them interact kind of like the Avengers or whatever.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it didn't come off. Monk Addison was originally created for that too, and Sleepers War was going to be a future version of that. But then Ted left and Chris left and Hedgecock left, and the guys who took over went a different direction. So, we didn't do the horror universe and I didn't do Sleepers War there. So I decided to turn it into a novel. And then when I finished the book I'm writing now, which is the third Necrotech book, I dive right into the second Sleepers War book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it would have been done sooner, but for those who don't know about this, it's one of the rare things I've co-written. I co-wrote it with Weston Oakes, and we had so much fun, building out the world and so on. And then Wes died. Rather, he got sick. We none of us expected him to die from it, and then he did, and it just punched a hole through my heart. He's one of my dearest friends. It's taken me a while to kind of get back into gear to want to write that next one solo. So I'm ready to go. I've got it plotted out. I actually gotten about 20,000 words of it drafted out. So as soon as I finish Ghosts of the Void, I dive right into that, and it'll probably be done by the end of summer. And then I start Joe Ledger 16. Yeah. Species Unknown will be the next Joe Ledger book.
How far are you planned out in your head, or?
Well, we've sold up to book 17 so far. Every couple of years we have as soon as I turn in the last book, we make a deal for the next couple. So the most recent deal I made was for Red Empire and Species Unknown. Well, I'm sorry. It was for Species Unknown and an as yet unnamed cyborg and cybernetics themed Joe Ledger book, and also a standalone horror novel about the Jersey Devil, one of my favorite cryptids.
Oh, okay.
So that's the most recent deal. And as soon as I turn those books in, my agent starts selling the next. Especially with the TV series in development and the enthusiasm built around that, and the 27 novel ideas I have in my files, I have no plans of stopping writing about Joe Ledger anytime soon.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
Great, yeah. For sure.
Because science keeps getting weirder and the world keeps falling off its hinges and catching fire. So that gives me a lot of material to write about.
Yeah, you're never gonna be without in this new world we're in.
It's funny, with Burn to Shine, a lot of people, I thought I wrote it based on what's going on now, but I wrote that book a year and a half ago. Just kind of reading the writing on the wall, And part of it, I get some flack from people accusing me of being too woke because I don't like militia groups. I have nothing against militia groups. I have something against idiots with guns. I have no problem. My son is a gun owner. I'm going to be buying a gun soon. I have nothing against guns. I think guns should be like cars. You should need a license and get training. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Sure.
I love to drive. I don't resent the fact that I had to take a driver's test.
Right.
I think it's a good idea to know the frickin' rules out there. So I'm just one of those guys I'm fine with guns as long as they're sensible. Militia groups, there are a lot of militia groups out there who did a lot of good, and I even reference that in the book, saying there are some that if there's a natural disaster, they're usually the first guys on the scene, sometimes even before FEMA or anyone else, helping people. I love those guys. The ones who are basically amosexuals, I'm not so fond of.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends are, I'm a martial artist, 60 years in martial arts. I'm a former bodyguard, so I carried a gun. I'm a fairly tough individual. A lot of my friends are tough individuals. I've noticed that the people who are legitimately tough, like a lot of the guys I know from Delta Force and the SEALs, aren't the guys who who would walk into a a Taco Bell strapped with rifles and pistols like some guys do. There's things we worked out in therapy there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I have no problem with gun ownership, concealed carry, or anything. I just think that people go a little off their rocker. And unfortunately, because they get more press than the sensible gun owners, which outnumber them 1,000 to 1, it makes it seem like all gun owners are nuts. And it's not the case. And I thought it was pretty clear in my view on the book that that is the case because Joe Ledger shoots people for a living.
Yeah.
I mean, so clearly I'm not anti-gun. I just think you should shoot the right guy for the right reason, not just walk around looking, you don't want it to be like a hammer. If you're a hammer, you're always looking for a nail. I
Right.
don't want a guy with a gun on his hip looking for a reason to shoot someone. So,
Yeah.
you're into
You do go into that in one of the conversations on all the militia groups
Yeah.
in this book.
Yeah.
And it's like saying that all Christian religions are bad because Westboro Baptist Church is out there,
Right. Exactly. Or that all Muslims are bad because, a percentage of them have done. There's 1.2 billion Muslims, and maybe there's a few 100,000 who are assholes compared to 1.2 billion. There are a lot of Christians out there doing a lot of good in the world.
Yeah.
They don't get the press. The press likes to focus on the people who are doing something bad or saying something outrageous, and it dominates the news cycle, and it gives a warped view of what's really out there. And that's unfortunate because people hear the word Christian or Muslim or gun owner or something, and immediately their reaction is either they're my people, you can't say anything bad about them, or why aren't they talking about what the good that people do? So it's a mess.
One side or the other.
So, yeah, and people, it's funny that every once in a while, especially now that we're so politically polarized in this country, people will suddenly say, "Oh, Joe Ledger's books are political." They've been political since the first fucking book. I mean, from the book, and there are people on both sides of the political issue. Joe actually reflects my political views, and we hate everyone who's in politics because we see so few of them actually representing fairly the constituents who voted them in. They're in there in the pockets of whoever's paying their bills, corporations, whatever. That shouldn't be allowed. Nobody in politics should be allowed to be a lobbyist for anything.
Well, and I think you're literally voicing Mr. Church right there. Like,
Yeah.
This is why I loved it. Like, as everything you're saying, I'm like, this is something Church would say, like to a T. And the crazy part is Joe's the same way. Joe would say the same thing or have the same thought. He probably would say it. And it's something I feel like as these books have gone along through the series, like Joe's mentality, like he used to think Church was such a mystery, right? There's still question marks, but as the series progresses, Joe tends to agree with him, or they just see eye to eye on a lot more things, or maybe it's just the volume of writing that we've all become more comfortable with.
No, Joe's definitely understanding more and more about Church. In the next book, in Red Empire, the last scene of that book is probably my favorite scene in the entire Ledger series because Joe and Church come to a point of true understanding and possibly even true friendship. And it's I think definitely my favorite scene in the entire series. Can't wait for that book.
When is that coming out again?
March.
Son of a.
Sucks.
Church is willing to sacrifice Joe, but Joe doesn't want to be sacrificed.
No, it's not that. It's
I'm kidding.
but it is one of the more emotionally and psychologically complex scenes that I feel I've written, and I really like it. So can't wait for it to come out. This whole thing about a book, you write a book and it takes a year to come out, pisses me off because I want to have conversations with my reader friends.
It pisses us off too.
I'd like to be reading it right now.
We're ready. But let's segment off that because another question I did have for you is you have a lot of your big bads like Galt and Toys, and I see a turn in a lot of these guys. Not a lot, but enough that I've noticed is like Toys. Okay, hey, this is shit. What we're doing, that's not good. There's a line, and we're about 600 feet over it. Uh, is that something you plan on them seeing that evil and turning? Which we saw it with Bones a little bit.
Mhm. Well, that's one of the things. I taught women's self-defense for 35 years, and I've researched a lot of criminal behavior because of the kinds of things I teach. Self-defense programs and safety awareness programs. I also taught programs for police and for special forces. So understanding the mentality of the enemy is important. It is rare to find someone who is 100% committed to badness. It is extremely rare. Even somebody who it does armed robbery will have a limit of how much violence they're willing to do. Some of it because they don't want to get caught, some of it because that's just not who they are. And that is reflected in the characters. Now, Galt was not evil, he was greedy. I mean, he was possibly sociopathic, but really he was greedy. Toys was raised by a corrupt person, Galt, but his idolizing that guy and the things he did for that guy eventually collided with his Christianity, his Catholic guilt, and he realized that he was not what he was doing was wrong. And It's funny because he was not in Patient Zero when I first sold the book. Galt was just in his own head all the time. And my editor, Michael Homler, said, we need to give him kind of a Watson character, someone to talk to, someone that we can relate to, so we can kind of understand, his relationship with this person and his, and so on. And there was a show called, I don't know if you guys are science fiction nuts, but the show Blake Seven. Do you guys know about that one? It was this British science fiction series. It was it was basically the Dirty Dozen in space, and it inspired Firefly. A bunch of guys on a stolen spaceship out there trying to fight the Empire, but they're all criminals. So that kind of I like that concept of someone who can get to the point where their own life of crime comes up against an ethical line in the sand, or how far are they willing to go to be criminals when there are people out there doing tremendous harm and they have the ability to do something about it. So when I created Toys, I wrote him into the story in the final draft I did before it was published, with the idea that I would follow his process of going from being a criminal to trying not to be a criminal, not trying to be good, because he's still believes he's going to hell for what he's done. And my Catholic friends who are readers say, yes, he should, because he killed people, innocent people, but he is trying not to do any more evil before he dies. And Church kept putting him in the field to do crimes, or to kill people. Yes, for the good guys, but it's still morally reprehensible. And then I got to the point where I knew I wanted Toys to break that mold and go back in the field, but on his own terms. And that's why I gave him the Wild Hunt. He doesn't have as big a role in Burn to Shine, but he'll have a pretty big role in Red Empire, and hopefully eventually a spin-off novel.
That's interesting, and that makes me like question Church motives. Like, I'm going to put this man who's damned already back. Just you get back in the field. Is he just that expendable?
It's not a matter of expending. He doesn't expect Toys to go in there and die. He expects Toys to go in there and kill the bad guys.
No, but I know. But he's like, he's already damned. So what's the worst that could happen? Send this guy out.
Church is a very complex individual, but his thing is always about the war, fighting that war. The expression "the war is the war" is a really important one, and his reasons for that war are explained in Red Empire. But it's not nefarious. It's pragmatic,
right?
Wholly, not nefarious. And they look the same from a distance. So I love Church. Church is my most complex character, and yet the one that I have been stingiest with parsing out information about. That all comes to a head in Red Empire.
Yeah, we've had some nights where we throw Church theories around and then belittle each other on who's right and assume we're all wrong.
Yeah, and
without me commenting, what are some of your theories?
I think I've sent you a few on social media, just being like asking, and I think every time you're like, nope, 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 nope. I'm like, okay.
I know the one that I've been following lately is King Arthur. since he recruits his knights, if you will, against evil.
There is an Arthurian philosophy in church, but he's not King Arthur. King Arthur was a fictional character, and church is based on a real person.
And that leads me to one more thing. We were talking about this just a minute ago. I love that I know it was the first book and probably the second one. There's a couple lines where Joe's like, and there's no fucking vampires. Like, that's not real. Don't worry about vampires. And then later it's like, ah, damn it. Okay, yeah, there's vampires. Uh, the curveballs, man.
He has lied to Joe a few times.
Yeah.
Just as almost any military commander would, because there's need to know. And if you don't need to know, I'm not going to tell you.
Yeah.
Nor do I want to encourage you thinking about it anymore, because I want you to think on this right now. This is your mission. That's something else. He did mention there was no Godzilla, and Godzilla will not appear in the Joe Ledger series. And the aliens that appeared in Extinction Machine, there's a lot of conversation going on different threads about whether they're aliens or not, whether they're from another planet or not.
All right.
My implication is they're just from next door, the over one.
I'm not gonna lie. I want Joe Ledger versus Predator. We all want it. We all want
it. Actually, since I have done an Aliens versus Predator anthology, and I've written Predator stories. Now that Disney owns Predator, and I have worked for Disney while I was with Marvel, I have reached out to them to see if there's any possibility of them allowing me to use Predator in a Joe Ledger story, non-canon, but a Joe Ledger story. My guess and my agent's guess is they're going to say no. But who knows? You don't win unless you ask.
Would that make Violin a Disney princess? I'd buy that hat.
Violin is still one of my favorite characters too. And also the character of Tommy, who's in this book, is actually not my creation. Marie Whitaker, who's a writer friend of mine, created the character of Tommy for a short, novelette that she and I were co-writing for, I think it was Joe Ledger's Secret Missions. And she was introduced in that. And I like the character, and I've since used her not only in other short stories, but I reference her. She's actually on the screen here on the page in Burn to Shine, and I think she has a cameo in the Joe Ledger graphic novel, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure I gave her a name check in that.
Yeah, is that still in pre-order, or is that
yes, in fact,
ready to rock?
The art is done. We're doing the color now. I just wrote a standalone short story that'll be in the graphic novel that is Joe Ledger and Violin and Mike Sweeney up against folkloric monster from a cryptid from central Pennsylvania. And I had a lot of fun with that. And also, I don't know if you guys know the Snafu series of military science fiction novels, anthologies.
I was reading something about that the other day. What's your connection with that?
Well, I've written for 2 or 3 of them in the past for the anthologies. And Chad Stahelski, who's doing Joe Ledger TV series, also optioned that as a possible TV series. But the guy, Jeff, who edits the Snafu books, asked me to come back and do a new story that takes a scene from Patient Zero and expands it out. We know that church burned down that hospital, but we don't know exactly why. It's referenced, we don't know exactly why. This is he and Grace Cortland in that hospital leading up to that event. And it's framed by some Joe Ledger scenes from Patient Zero, kind of revised a little bit, but mostly it's called Burning Down Heaven, or Burning Heaven to the Ground, I think it's called, the short story. And it's about church and church and Grace in that hospital. It'll be out in the Snafu Contagion, I believe is the name of the next anthology.
Okay.
I'll be announcing it once I have all the publishing details.
And when does Hearts and Minds come out?
Next month? June, I think. Because I said the reason it was a little delayed, the artist who originally was going to work with us, who did the 5 sample pages, had a scheduling conflict, and he had to withdraw. So we got this new artist, and she's amazing. And she did the entire book. They're now doing the colors for it. I think 33 pages into the 46 pages with color. and then the letter will come in. So we'll be ready to go to print in about a month, which means it'll be out sometime in June. And people can pre-order it now. I'll be putting the pre-order link up again tomorrow. But it's the same link actually as the old Kickstarter page. So you can always go there, but I'll post it again tomorrow.
And we'll post it right down there. So before I forget, we were talking about some crossovers and things like that. Another one that I don't know if these guys have read, the Dead of Night with the main, I mean, that's zombies, the horrible zombies. Lucifer 113 is mentioned in Burn to Shine, and we have seen Kill Switch maybe where Joe kind of does a universe or whatever that is.
Definitely exposure to the multiverse because of the God Machine.
Yeah.
Yes. And the Dead of Night leads into the Rotten Ruin series. It's the prequel, but I wrote those 4 books for adults, and the 7 Rotten Ruin books are for teens. But it's the same story, but it's a timeline split of Joe Ledger. It's not his actual future. It's the Rotten Ruin future. But he's in book 3 and 4 of the Dead of Night and books 3 to 7 of Rotten Ruin, getting older with each book.
Okay.
And also, if you, I don't know if you read the anthology that George Romero and I did. He and I, you know who George Romero is, right?
Oh, yes.
He and I, we were friends, and he and I did an anthology called Knights, plural, Knights of the Living Dead. And George was a huge fan of Rotten Ruin and Dead of Night, the first 2 Dead of Night books. So he said, look, it appears that you kill off this one character near the end of Fall of Night, the second book. I don't want him dead, and he said, and you didn't show him dying. He is presumed dead. I want him to be alive and to bring him. He wanted me to write a story for our anthology that would bring that character to the house from Night of the Living Dead.
Oh.
Because he felt that Dead of Night and Rotten Ruin, Dead of Night was in his view, the best prequel to Night of the Living Dead, and Rotten Ruin is the best sequel to it.
Wow.
That was where we're going. And we were working on a book that would be the connective tissue of that when he died. Unfortunately, the estate, run by his ex-wife, not his widow, his first wife, had already had somebody in mind to do the book, and he did a great job with it. I have no stones to throw at Daniel Krauss, his friend, but it would have been a book that George and I read together. So that means that if the character Sam Amora, who appears in Fall of Night, who was the one that he wanted me to bring officially to the house in Night of the Living Dead, they're in the same world as Night of the Living Dead, which means the Joe Ledger spin-off series is in Night of the Living Dead's world.
Man, just keep connecting those webs. That's awesome.
And you can blame Steve King for a lot of my bringing characters and other stories. Did I tell you about this before? When I first met Steve, it was at the Edgar Awards. He was getting his Grandmaster thing, and I sat with him for quite a while. And I had been up against him the previous year for Stoker Awards. I won for Best First Novel, but I lost to him for Novel of the Year. I do not feel shame for losing to Stephen King.
Who's the Stephen King guy again? Yeah.
He's a talented kid that may have a future, So anyway, one of the things Steve told me, he says, my fans, my constant readers, as he loves to call them, love it when I bring a character from one story into another. And he said, during our conversation, I mentioned I didn't know what else I was going to write. I wasn't going to necessarily stay in horror. I was going to wander wherever the ideas were. And he said, it's a great idea. He said, take characters and just have them wander in and out of each other's stories. Don't make it that they have to have read the previous work in order to understand this character's role in this book. But he said, do it because your dedicated readers will follow and enjoy it and they'll be in on it. The other readers, it'll just be another character.
Yeah.
And I started doing that really pretty soon after I met him. And I continue to do it.
I mean, it's fun. It works. It's one of those things we sit about and talk about. We're big Stephen King fans as well. So especially with the Dark Tower series potentially on the horizon with Mike Flanagan.
Yeah. The priest showing up there was from Salem's Lot was like, what? Because I didn't know what was happening until I read the book. I'm like, what? But yeah, I love that kind of thing, that large shared worlds. My friend F. Paul Wilson did the same thing. He had his Repairman Jack character from that series, and the character Glycan from The Keep. And then he created the adversary cycle where all of his books were all part of this same war against this eternal evil. It was fantastic.
I'm not gonna lie. When I was reading the Kagen books, you know, slight spoilers, but when the Prince of Games first comes up and starts kind of divulging a little bit of his past, that was a moment. That was a moment that I had. I was like, he did
Yeah,
it
because
again. Mayberry got me.
well, one of his previous names was Flag.
I know, but even beyond that, just you having that in your universe from book to book, and I was like, I went from engaged to like that became page turner at that point. I was like, ah, crap, I'm not gonna put this down today.
Yeah.
But I had so much fun with the Kagan books. I hope I will be doing another series of that somewhere down the road. I've got the next 5 or 6 novels already sold, so the next couple of years are kind of booked. But I have an idea for another Kagan series dealing with the Serpent Men. There's a scene in the last Kagan book that sets that up.
Yeah. Now, so real quick, I just got to tell you, the last time you were on the show, you were really highly recommending Robert E. Howard. Robert E. Howard, and I took your advice and went through the entire library of all of his Conan books. And man, you were not kidding. Like, there's a ton of inspiration to be had there. You mix that with a little bit of Lovecraft, and I'm reading every single word that Jonathan Maberry is writing. So quick question: the Serpent Men that you're talking about, are these the same
Yeah.
Robert E. Howard's Serpent Men from Conan?
Yeah, so here's kind of the backstory of all that. Lovecraft, created the cosmic horror universe and built it out and everything, building on the bones of Robert W. Chambers and Poe and Jules Verne. I'll explain that in a second. And then he had a lot of other writers. They were all writing for Weird Tales. A lot of other writers writing for Weird Tales began corresponding with Lovecraft. He was kind of like he was the Stephen King of that era, of that genre of pulp fiction. And he encouraged Robert E. Howard to take elements of his cosmic horror, including the serpent, and build them into his stories. The connective tissue was clearest in the Kull stories, the King Kull stories, because that's where the Serpent Men, because it's Atlantis, it's thousands of years before Conan, and the Serpent Men are a more dominant threat. But that's Robert E. Howard, essentially love letters to H.P. Lovecraft. And that was so much fun. And of course, then you roll forward to my favorite sword and sorcery series of all time, which is the Kane novels and short stories by Karl Edward Wagner. I don't know if you ever read them. They're out of print, unfortunately, right now. I think they're supposed to be coming back in print. The main character is Cain from Cain and Abel. He's an immortal, red-haired, left-handed son of Lilith and Adam, not Eve and Adam.
Sounds right.
He's doomed to walk the earth forever, and he is a sorcerer, a villain, and occasionally the lesser of evils, which makes him kind of the default hero of his stories. He is a terrible human being, and he's a great character, and he's my favorite series of stories, and they're all Lovecraftian. There's Lovecraftian elements built all the way through them. Nice. Hellboy is Lovecraftian. A lot of us, who and it's funny because a lot of us who write the stuff that dips into Lovecraft, into the cosmic horror stuff, we all tend to know each other. We're all very like-minded. Mike Mignola, who does Hellboy, is a good buddy of mine. Chris Golden, who works on Hellboy and other projects with Mike. He used to be on my Three Guys with Beards podcast. He's one of the, like you guys are Three Guys with Beards. He and James Moore and I were all Lovecraft fans, and so it's like a secret society of people who like the really weird shit and to like it be connected to other really weird shit.
You need somebody to talk about when you're into weird shit. It's important.
And I mean, the Repairman Jack books, the character of Glycan and the ultimate evil that he's fighting are Rasputin, I think no, that's Doctor Who. But the Repairman Jack stories sometimes touch on Lovecraftian elements as well. So and the guy who wrote those, Paul Wilson's a dear friend. So I think, we had this magnetic attraction to one another. Like, we know the other guy is as weird as we are. So we want to, kind of hang together.
Yeah. And I know you have one anthology where other writers wrote two anthologies.
Yeah, a
Yes,
church.
Joe Ledger Unstoppable and Joe Ledger Unbreakable.
Okay, Unbreakable is the one I was originally. What's the other one?
Unstoppable. That was the first one. That came out, oh God, 10 years ago, probably.
Okay, I've read them both. I've got so many books of your stuff. I literally thought about moving them over here and was like, I need a box if I'm going to do this. Uh, do you enjoy having other like seeing Joe and those guys through other people's eyes, other authors?
Yeah, yeah. I'm one of those people that loves sharing my toys. I love writing in other people's worlds. I'm the president of the International Association of Media Tie-in Writers. It would be kind of weird if I didn't like people to write in my literary worlds, since I write in everyone else's. And so that people have written Joe Ledger stories, have written Dead of Night stories. Rachel Lavin has written some stories with me, and Brian Thomas Schmidt's written a story with me for that world. I Rotten Ruin, I haven't had any other people write in yet, but if the movie gets made, it's in development now. If it gets made, that'll probably happen. And V Wars, V Wars was created in a shared world. I did a 45, 50,000 word short novel, and then other writers do field reports as this plague build out. Joe Ledger's in that too. He's in book 4 of that, and in the comic books.
I don't think I put that book down when I started reading it the first time. I think I read it in one long sitting because I was just hooked.
V Wars you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had so much fun with that. It was and you can blame Max Brooks for that. I'll
That makes
explain.
sense.
So Max had been editing. For those who don't know, and there are like 2 of you left on Earth who don't know who Max Brooks is, World War Z, zombie survival guide. He had been hired by IDW Publishing, a comic book company that was doing a prose line to do an anthology, and he did a GI Joe anthology, Tales of the Cobra Wars, and he called me up and asked if I'd like to write a novella for that. I'm like, yeah. It's basically Joe Ledger-esque. It's, military combat and high tech. I mean, of course I'm going to write for it. But instead of him doing another anthology, he started working on a new project. And he's not a fast writer. So he when he does one project at a time, so he want to go back and write his next novel. So the IDW asked me to do an anthology. I said, sure. And that anthology was V-Wars. And I had the idea because I subscribe to a lot of science newsletters, and back in 2010 I got one of the stories was that melting permafrost was releasing ancient bacteria and viruses trapped in the permafrost, and I'm thinking, well, that can't be good. So the idea then became V-Wars. I pitched it. Originally it was going to be a Joe Ledger novel, by the way. V-Wars was original, but the reason I didn't do it for Ledger, it would have substantially and permanently changed the fabric of his world. So I didn't want to do it as a Joe Ledger book.
Yeah.
So Joe's appearance in the 4th V-Wars book is another Maberry verse timeline. And as soon as I start writing it, I was sitting in a Starbucks writing the scene that's about the guy in the Starbucks who's working as a barista who becomes the first vampire, Michael Fane. And I'm like, I think this should be shared. So I called IDW and said, I will agree to do your next anthology. I hadn't originally agreed. And I said, this is what I want to do. Everyone I asked said yes. All the writers immediately said yes. And we did 4 volumes of it. And I did the 2 volumes of the comics. And we had so much fun.
Yeah, that one was great.
That's fantastic. Absolutely.
Still a possibility of us doing another TV series. Ian Summer telling me he wants to do it, but his bourbon brand that he and Paul Wesley, his co-star from Vampire Diaries, that bourbon brand is the fastest, biggest growing bourbon brand in the world right now. So they're making a lot more money doing that than he would doing TV.
Getting bloody again. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but we may do it. We'll see. I've got 2 things in development now. The Joe Ledger and the Rotten Room movie, and we're in discussions with Peacock for a adaptation of Nights of the Living Dead, and that's something. My producing partner for that is James Rede Rodriguez, who starred in the show Psych.
Okay.
It's a hilarious comedy mystery show, and it was parallel in the same world as Monk, but Monk does not appear in it. But it's the same world, and it ran for I don't know 7 or 8 years. I love the show, and James has become a good friend. So we're trying to develop that for TV, and there may be guest stars in that too.
Nice. So quick question. The graphic novel, the all the other items, the one coming out, it's Joe and Violin.
What's in mind? Yeah.
Yeah. So this is just a quick question for you. What other, like, if that's successful, if that takes off, and now we're gonna do an entire series of like duos going and doing things, like what's something you would love to write? Is that like a Joe Ledger and Bunny novel? Is that just him and
Well,
Tug?
I,
Like, what do
I
you got?
one of my plans is to do hopefully another graphic novel with Joe and Violin because they're good for horror stories. So she's a monster herself. She's a vampire or Dampier anyway. But I would love to do a backup Top and Bunny story. I've always wanted to do something just with Top and Bunny, but it's kind of hard to have, to build that into a novel. Um, there are a couple scenes in it, like there's one in is it Relentless? I think it is, where Top and Bunny are recruited into yeah. Is it
Oh
Top and
yeah.
Bunny? That was a lot of fun.
Diamond there.
I would love to actually write a Top and Bunny novel at some point. Or, and this is one of my dream projects, either as comics or as in prose, to do a whole book of stories about everyone but Joe, everyone in the RTI, do a Samson Riggs story, do an early story with Artemisia Bliss when she's still one of the good guys.
Rudy Sanchez with boring patients.
No. Actually, I was thinking of doing a story where somebody who's trying to get at Joe but can't find Joe tries to come after Rudy and his kids. And Cersei, being the daughter of Mr. Church, um, becomes the action hero, and Rudy again becomes the sidekick. And I think it would be a really funny story because we know that Cersei is tough. From King of Plagues, she was very tough. But I'd like to do, give toys some more gameplay. And another project I would like to do, and this may happen because Chad Stahelski, doing the TV show, he loves ArcLight a lot. And he would like to see, he said if the show works, if it goes on TV, he's likely to bring Violin in early, much earlier, so that, because otherwise it would be season 4 of the show. He would like to bring her in maybe season 2. And then if she's successful, build that out into an ArcLight show, which I would freaking love.
Yeah.
And he said, he asked me, why don't you do a book about ArcLight? I've gotten pushback from the publisher, not the editor, the publisher, about that for some reason. But my plan is at some point, if not for my main publisher, then for another publisher, to do a book of ArcLight stories, either entirely written by women, my women writer friends, with me editing, or some solo stories with them, and then some where I would team up with one of my female writer friends and do some ArcLight stories. But I would love to do an ArcLight book.
That's a cool idea. I like that a lot.
It is cool.
And ArcLight will get a much bigger role in one of the future Joe Ledger books. I mean, it's going to be like parallel stories of RTI and ArcLight doing something, and then they really dovetail with Lilith being a little more active in the field. And to say you wouldn't want her coming after you.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things that you always do with ArcLight and Violin and Lilith in your books, it's they're so independent of Church and them. Like Church and them throughout the series will rely on ArcLight to do something, but ArcLight never asks Church for crap because they've got it all handled. You know what I mean? Like it never. Lilith shows up because there's a problem, but Lilith doesn't ever seem like she's really like called in, or she's not calling in Church. You know what I mean?
Yeah, she's technically, I kind of test drive her, putting her in the field a little bit in Burn to Shine. But in a future story, she and Church are going to be in the field together on something. And it will be something so dramatic that I'm not sure I want Joe to know about it, even though it'll be in the same book. Because there are things that happen that Joe doesn't always see.
Yeah. Which that was one of the things we talked about earlier before we got on this call was the dogs of war, the Church just telling everyone to leave the mansion and be like, I got this. It's like, I wonder what happened in there.
Yeah. I get probably 100 emails a year asking for that story to be written out. I don't know that I'm ever going to do it. I kind of like the fact that I didn't. But in Red Empire, you will see quite a bit of what happens when Church is fighting. When he is, if it's you up against him, you better be right with Jesus.
I don't want to be in the state against him.
I just
No, I don't want to be in the same time zone.
I wonder what these green swirly eyes are. Like, man, that epilogue. Make sure.
It is indicative of a certain state of being. That's all I'm going to tell you.
Well, so here's my thing. The reason why my curiosity is just absolutely piqued is he's got swirling green eyes, and then it's like he's a real character. He's a real like nonfiction, real human, and I'm like, it's still magical. It's still something. It's still got a little edge to it. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, and there was a reason the original draft of the book was called The Alchemist. I'm just saying, because alchemy does play a big part in the next book. But spoilers.
Man, March.
Yeah, I think I messaged you a while back and asked you if it was Antoine. I think. Who was that? Count Antoine. I think on social media, and you were like, "Guess again." I was like, "Dang it."
Yeah. A lot of people have guessed that he is Saint Germain, which is partly true. And the partly is the real. If you've ever read any of the biographies of Saint Germain, he claims to be 500 years old. So who was he before he was Saint Germain?
Okay, I gotcha. I'm reading between the lines.
Yes, he was Saint Germain.
It was. He is. Technically, he is. Man. Damn it.
We went through this last time.
Yeah,
We're
this
doing
is the
this
same
again.
thing. So, well, now we got to wait for the next one.
Well, we might have a chat after we're done recording.
Don't tease us.
Hanging up.
There's a.
I'm kidding.
Sorry, folks. This podcast is over.
Yeah, we got to go.
The damn it! Now I got off of what I was talking about. Lilith. We see her pop up every now and again, and they shared a moment right before Nicodemus, whatever he does, poof. How I'm sure either we'll never get it or we'll get it soon. Him with his new personalities in the last 3 books. Do we know that James Bond character?
Blofeld?
Dr. No?
No, the
Blofeld?
the James Bond character in the Ledger books with the son.
Bolton. Harcourt
Bolton. Totally blanked on it.
Harcourt.
Do we know he's dead?
Oh, he died in the end of the book. I mean, Nicodemus carved his face off.
So that I just want to make sure, because my original thought when I read that was like, oh, he's going to just take his face and do something to him. And no, okay.
No, he's dead. His story, and that's one of the fun things when you have characters that overlap on several books. Like Galt was in 3 books, and Toys is in some of the books, and he's semi-absent from some of them. That certain characters do reach the end of their story in my head, so I do give them a definite ending. And there will be some characters that at the end of Red Empire won't be in the Ledger series anymore.
Right.
And their time in the series will have ended. Now, who they are, I'm not going to say, but like Bolton reached the end of his usefulness to me and to the series, and therefore had to go. He created Kuga, and Kuga will continue to exist, the organization.
Okay.
Was one of the dangers he had of making the organization Kuga as well as his own identity, because then anyone can become Kuga.
Right. Which we expressed with Mr. October.
Mr. October.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which I do love Ray Porter's portrayal of Mr. October.
Ray has had license from me to be able to give the Nicodemus character a different voice in every book, different way of speaking in every book. Some are radically different, some are subtly different. Like the Mr. October character is probably the closest to Nicodemus's true personality. The furthest from it was the prisoner we met in King of Plagues.
Okay.
That was just an artifice. He was basically taking a rest, and the end of that book kind of brought him out of his. It's kind of like you ever read any of the old Thor comics, Odin Sleep?
Yeah.
Yeah.
occasionally he needs to sleep and recharge. So does Nicodemus. That's why in the Kagen books, he wakes up in book 2 as the Prince of Games because he has had a chance to rest, recharge, and he's ready to go and play some games some more.
And man, he did.
I liked his exit from the book too, from Dragon in Winter.
I love how he always just pieces out when things are getting bad. Like it's like,
Well, he's not in there for the conflict personally. He's in there to create the chaos
yeah.
so that it changes the world, and he loves that kind. He feeds on that chaotic energy. And he's one of my favorite characters to write.
But yeah, speaking of how he exits in Burn to Shine, and a little run of Mr. Pockets, or it's like, uh-oh. And I will, you just mentioned Ray Porter. I cannot tell you enough how much I enjoy him. I think we talked about this last time, but anybody listening out there that does audiobooks, when we talk about Mr. Pockets, that's a short story. Jonathan Maberry here did. Ray Porter reads it just like everything else, but there are parts I want to specifically call out for Mr. Pockets from Ray. It talks about how he has like an accent, but no accent. And the way Ray Porter reads this, one second he sounds Russian, the next second he sounds like country, and the next second he sounds British, and he mixes them all with this gravel. And it's amazing. Like, I don't know how he does it. The guy's a wizard.
Ray is a genius. I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen many of the things he's been in, like Sons of Anarchy, Modern Family, Monk. He's different in everything, and he blends. He fades into the character so much, he becomes the character. And when he reads the books, he does cold reads. He doesn't pre-read the book. He just starts recording, which is insane to me.
Crazy.
The only stuff he gets from me is sometimes I will tell him if a character is under an identity that's really Mr. Pockets or another character. Like when Sebastian Galt showed up in, was it Predator 1 or Dogs of War? I forget which book he was in. His last one.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that Ray didn't give him an American accent when it's actually Sebastian Galt.
Nice.
For the most part, not only do I not give him clues, I often try to screw him up or mess him up. Have him like characters speaking in foreign languages. Did I tell you about the Deadlands one last time we did this?
Yeah.
Yeah, where he turns out he actually does speak Lakota Sioux because of course he does.
Only person that does.
It's nuts. But yeah, Ray's amazing to work with, and he's written 2 Joe Ledger stories now, or 2 Mr. Church stories now. And he and I and Wayne Brady, who is another Joe Ledger fan, are going to be making a short film with Wayne and Ray starring in it. I'll be writing the script based on a Wayne Brady short story from Weird Tales that he wrote for me, and Wayne will be financing it. And that's just crazy soup right there. That's big helpings of crazy soup.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, 3 of us sitting there at a bar in LA in Santa Monica having drinks and just cooking this stuff up, is nuts.
You have a timeline on that one?
No, not yet. In fact, Wayne should be coming down. The problem with every time I talk to Wayne, he has another thing he's just been hired to do. And it's like, he says, well, that's your problem too. Every time I want to get together with you, just, it's like, so we're 2 of the busiest guys we know, but we'll find a time to do it. We'll get it done. It's a short film. So, probably take us a week to do when we finally get around to doing it. But it's going to be fun. And, Wayne is a huge fan of the Ledger, but he's also a huge fan of the Necrotech books. And he sent me this video. He was in costume, ready to go on stage as the Wizard of Oz in the Broadway revival of The Wiz. And he sent me a video of him gushing about Necrotech. That's just surreal as shit, So I'm hoping that he enjoys the next one too. It is not a small book.
I was about to say, hold that thing is a beast.
Looks hefty.
Yeah, it's a 700-page middle book of the series, and it's longer than the first one. Actually, the shortest one of the series will probably be the 3rd one. I'm hoping to get that done 130,000. This was close to 180,000 or 175,000. It's the same length as Red Empire, the next Joe Ledger book.
Okay.
You know how much awesome action is in the spine of that book right there.
Yeah, there's a lot. Great cover by Jeff Long, the Necrotech, the glaring eyes and all that.
Yeah.
And these are the good guys. The bad guys are Shoggoths, Night Gaunts, and the Outer Gods. So I'm having a lot of fun with this series. And there's a lot of direct nods to The Thing, of course, because some of it's set in Antarctica before some of those characters get out to deep space with these guys. And also Who Goes There, the novelette that inspired The Thing, which is a lot different than the movie adaptations.
Yeah.
I had fun. I had a lot of fun with that. And actually, for those who are listening, if you haven't yet read Necrotech, the paperback comes out next week, and it has a brand new original short story. It has diagrams of like the ships and space stations and stuff. Let me see if I can pull one of those up.
Pretty cool.
It has a glossary of Lovecraftian terms. There's all sorts of cool stuff in it. So the bonus edition has, really neat diagrams of that's the Shoggoth starfighter.
Yeah.
So it has a lot of really cool stuff in it, and that's the paperback edition and a brand new cover also by Jeff Long.
That's awesome.
Nice.
And when is that out?
May 5th, next week.
Okay.
Monday.
It's coming up.
All right.
Or Tuesday, May 6th, whatever Tuesday is, whatever day Tuesday is, it's coming out. That's the paperback edition. Ray, of course, does the audiobook edition of it. And that will tie into the Joe Ledger series, even though it's a couple hundred years in the future. Ledger will not be in any of the future stuff because he's not immortal. But the God Machine for sure. And actually, I say that Ledger won't be in it, but for those who remember Kill Switch, there was a scene where when he gets exposed to the God Machine, he's on a beach and he encounters Prospero Bell.
Yeah.
That scene. Another version of that scene is in the third book. And I just wrote that the other day. So Ledger has an unnamed cameo. It's funny because my assistant who edits my stuff as every time I finish a section I send to her, she got to one line where character Prospero Bell runs into a guy on the beach, blonde-haired guy with a knife. And the only line that character says is, "What in the wide blue fuck?" Joe Ledger line. That's a unique Joe Ledger line.
That's fantastic. And that one is one, Necrotech. The way the action is different from the other stuff you write. I want to go back and just the last probably 50 pages of that is hella fun.
Yeah, I love fight scenes, battle scenes where it's fighting on. You have a bunch of different battles happening at once, and they all interact. There are two series that influenced me for that. One was the Sharp novels by Bernard Cornwell. If you ever read those books, or they don't do it, they didn't have the budget to do it as much in the Sean Bean movies they based on it, but in the books might have the Battle of Waterloo. So you have Sharp and his team, then you have Napoleon, then you have this group and that group, and you keep bouncing around so that you have a big picture of the whole thing. They did the same thing better in the film version than in the book in the Battle of Pelennor Fields in Return of the King. You had what was going on in the city of Ecthelion? No, whatever the hell the name of that city was.
One outside of Gondor.
Was that Gondor?
Yeah. You had the characters with the ghosts under the mountain. You had the Rohirrim. All those shifts and points of view filled in that battle to richness so that you understand the scope of it. I've always been influenced by that. And I love doing that sort of thing. So I think the first time I really did that was in Bad Moon Rising. You had a bunch of different scenes part of the same battle, but I really got to play with it in the Liberty Bell battle and the end of Patient Zero, because I had several different characters in their individual fights that were battles in the same climactic giant battle. Yeah. So in Necrotech, there's all sorts of fights going on, and I also, when I told my editor that I'm going to kill off a bunch of my main characters about halfway through or three-quarters way through the book, she's like, "What?" And then she read the book and she understood why and what that means for those characters, because
Yeah.
Dan isn't always dead when it comes to cosmic horror. You know?
Yeah.
I like how you say
And,
kill off a bunch of main characters. You have a
funny 'cause-
twinkle in your eye.
Because you figure the giant robot in this is piloted by the ghost of a human pilot who died in battle. And they become these giant mechs, and they can absorb materials from crashed spaceships and build new bodies and constantly transform. I was writing a scene today where a bunch, three necrotechs and three humans are in a crashed spaceship that's kind of like a combination zoo and bioengineering factory, and all these things like everything from Utah raptors and ankylosaurs to creatures that don't exist on Earth are all attacking them, and uh, they have to fight those. And it's just the fun of having a human ghost who's one of our heroes in a mech suit, and humans who are just in spacesuits fighting together, and the different fight choreography that goes along with that. I'm having too much fun doing this shit.
We can't tell.
Yeah. I mean, really, as job descriptions go, making stuff up for a living and getting paid for it, and being a professional pop culture nerd, this does not suck as a job. I have done many worse jobs in my life.
And you're nailing it, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks. Some of the stuff does get dark, but at least people tell me that they can see that I'm, just by reading, they can see that I'm enjoying what I'm doing. And that makes me feel good that they can, be in on the fun of it. So,
Yeah.
Also include my readers in a lot of stuff. I mean, I'm always talking about the stuff in podcasts, on my Ask Me Anythings and at signings. I like to include them in the fun of it because it makes it more fun for me, because I'm also a nerd. And I'm always happier when I'm with my fellow nerds like you guys, because that's my safe space.
Yeah.
Emotional support nerds.
And you are like very, very available and committed to open contact with fans and the social media database. Is that, do you get to a point where you okay, I've got this idea. What points do you get to with that? I know you've asked about video games and like, what are you listening to? What roadblocks do you have when you come up to those kind of points?
The only things I try to I tend to deflect is I don't like too many questions about my family, because my family doesn't, they're not into pop culture as much. My wife's not into pop culture, so she doesn't like to be on my podcast or my Facebook page or anything. And I respect that. That's their wishes. As sometimes people try to cross a line and they want to know what she's doing today. Well, that's nobody's business but hers. So, questions like that. I mean, there are gentle ways to deflect them, but I do. You can ask me anything about my dog, and I am very happy that I'm going to be a grandfather. So I'm talking about my son and his fiance and the baby they're going to have, Orion.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congrats, man.
Awesome.
Who gets a cameo in the third Necrotech book?
Hey, there you go.
Of course, I'm going to name a character after Orion. It's a great name for a kid.
That is, it's solid.
Fantastic.
But I love interacting with my readers because, we're all fans of this sort of stuff. So why wouldn't I want to hang out with them?
Yeah.
I love things like Comic-Con. I'll be a special guest at San Diego Comic-Con this year. I love Dragon Con, and I'll be at Fan Fusion in Phoenix. That's basically nerdvana for me. I get to go there and hang out with the people who get my pop culture references, and I get theirs. So it's kind of like we understand the secret language, and it makes it fun too, because I've always been like this. Even when I was a bodyguard, I was still a pop culture nerd.
Yeah.
But back then it was something you felt kind of hesitant about mentioning in public. Now it's like, fuck it, this is who I am, and it's great. And my editor of the Joe Ledger books and a bunch of other books, Michael Homler, he is a super nerd. In fact, he used to go to ball games with the head of Marvel Comics when that guy lived in New York, and then he would come out to Comic-Con, and every year we'd walk around at Comic-Con, and he'd ask me what the next Joe Ledger book was going to be. And that's actually how Killswitch came about. I joked with him. It was only a joke, saying, "Oh, it's going to be Joe Ledger and Cthulhu." And I thought he was going to laugh about it. We'd be done. Then he goes, "That's awesome." I'm like, "Oh shit! Now I got to write
Yeah.
it."
You got to make that happen.
You made the
Yep.
lie too enticing.
Yep. So yeah, I have a lot of fun doing this, and also with the position I'm in with media tie-in group, I'm able to a lot of times work comes my way. Like there's a big license that I might be getting soon to do an anthology and maybe even scout talent to write novels for this big license that's out there. And I'll be able to bring in people I know, friends of mine, and give them like high-paying jobs because I know them and I trust them. And so I'd rather work with people I know and trust than someone I don't know.
I'll be available.
Conversations can be had.
What when you talk about being a nerd, I mean, I always tell people I'm a super nerd because if things I know about, I know everything there is to know about them. If I read a book, I'll read it 5 times, you know. What are you nerding out on right now? Like, is there anything you're watching?
Oh yeah, I just finished Dark Winds, the third series of that Navajo Tribal Police series based on
Oh
Tony
yeah.
Hill. The 3 stars of it, Zan McClarnon, who played Echo's father in the Marvel Echo series, he's the star of it, and also Kiowa Gordon and Jessica Matson. I know her by the first name. I can't remember her last name. Matthews Matson, but they're the 3 stars of it, and that show is amazing. I'm tonight. I'll be watching the next episode of Andor. The second season is even better than the first. Loving it. Reacher was great. Not a fan of the fight choreography of the last 2 seasons. The first season fight choreography was better,
Yeah.
but story, it's fantastic. And what else am I watching? I watched The Gorge recently. Tried to love it. Loved the romance, but the logic flaws in it bugged the crap out of me. This is the most dangerous threat to the whole world, and they have 2 people guarding it, and they're not allowed to talk to one another.
Yep.
I feel like we just had this conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, so you get me, you know. But the romance was great. It was a really good romance. I loved it. But the other stuff bothered me. So, and then I've got to go see Sinners. All my friends have seen it, and I've got to go see Sinners because it looks amazing. Ryan Coogler, big fan of his because
Yeah.
of Creed movies, the Black Panther movies, the fact that he used so much of my stuff in Wakanda Forever, and we talked about it at an after party. And he told me back then that he was starting to develop a vampire movie, but he says, I can't tell you too much about it, but it's set back in the early 20th century. And he says, you're going to love it. And I'm like, okay. And I saw the trailers, like, oh my God, it's amazing.
I've heard nothing but good things about it.
Yep. So there's a bunch of stuff. I haven't been following too many comics lately, and I kind of got to dive back into that, but partly because I'm going to be writing another comic soon. I'll be writing Death Poem of Sensio Toro, which is based on one of my short stories about an aging samurai who's dying of cancer, hired by a family to go rescue a baby from an island overrun by zombies. And it was one of my short stories, one of my early short stories. This guy from Australia, IPI Publishing in Australia, uh, met me at Comic-Con and asked me which of my short stories I would like to do as a comic. I told him that, I sent it to him. So now we're just searching for an artist because I'm ready to get started on it. So I'll be doing that next.
Not which could I do, it's which one would you like, because everything you do is up here. So I just want one. Just give me one.
Uh,
That's great.
it's weird because I never have just one project going on at a time. And I don't know how I'm able to keep it straight, but I am. And also so many of my friends are creative, so I'm always being fed stuff that's cool and it's out there. And like one of the top shows on Apple TV right now is called Dope Thief. Have you guys watched any of that?
I have not watched that one yet
Yeah.
either.
It's Ridley Scott TV show, but it's based on one of my friend's novels. He was one of the original members of the group I had called the Liars Club back in Philadelphia. And he's written like 4 novels in 20 years. And Ridley Scott happened to read one of them and made a brilliant freaking show out of it. It's a gritty crime series set in Philly. It's amazing.
It keeps suggesting it to me when I've just finished Severance or Severed. Severance?
Severance.
I have not watched Severance. I have not watched Severance yet. I know there's a third season in the works, or maybe about to launch. I'm going to wait till that's done because it will wrap the show, and then
Yeah.
I want to binge it while I'm traveling to some convention or something. I love. That's where I do a lot of binge watching when
Okay.
I'm in. It's just
It's got a lot of Lost vibes to it. Just
cool.
take that in a totally
Oh,
different
that's-
universe. Yeah.
It actually has an ending to it.
We'll see.
Here's hoping.
Oh, the other show I really love, and season 4 is being shot right now, is From.
From is amazing.
From is amazing, and the star of that, Harold Perrineau, is a good friend of mine, and I keep trying to get him to give me hints. He gives me some hints, but they're so obscure. He's a bastard. But I love that show. I have my own theories, and a couple of theories have been spoiled by the events of the last episode of the last season. I'm like, well, that doesn't go where I thought it was going
That
to go.
shot all my stuff to shit.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the guy who did Lost, but he promised everyone that he actually had to tell the studio what the ending of it was, where they wouldn't let him do it.
So I read about that, and
That's a good fail-safe.
he said that he made into there's an illusion in the first episode of you see that, and then you're gonna see the end, and you're gonna be like, oh, okay, it ties everything together. It's like I like that they did that. I always like to know my ending of a story when I'm doing something, coming up with something.
Well, I mean, that's how I write. I plot it out. I write the opening, then I jump forward and write the end. Then I back up and aim at the ending. I do that with everything I write.
Yeah.
Dean Koontz suggested that to me when we were on a panel together, and it was an idea he stole from Faulkner, and I stole it from Dean, and it works really. It also speeded me up like 3 times, tripled my output speed.
Now you do outlines though when you write.
Dude,
How
very bare bones, but I do
Okay.
outline.
How does that work after, like for the Ledger series, after 15 novels, you're like, who keeps that straight? Like, how do you do that?
Well, partly I usually listen to the last couple of Ledger books on audio before I write the next one. So, starting when I'm about halfway through the second Sleepers War book, I'll be listening to Cave 13 and Burn to Shine again to get ready to, and also, I'll read through Red Empire. But there's a pretty solid reset for a lot of story elements for the next one, so that'll make it a little easier. Kind of like it's not the end of RTI or anything, but it's like a location change for them will happen and some other things, and that's going to helps clear the mind, because now I can rebuild a new set of specs for the Ledger series. But there are things that it's amazing that you forget. Like, for example, when I was talking to Chad about Ledger, he was saying that one of his favorite characters was Bug, and he said, but when we do the show, we're going to put Bug in the first season. And I'm like, well, he was in there from the beginning. He's like, no, he wasn't. He was introduced in book 3. I'm like, really? I was convinced Bug was there at the beginning.
Yeah,
Book 3.
was it Doctor Who was kind of in the first couple books that was kind of
Well,
the nerd?
Who was in all the books, but there was one person, a Japanese name that I just pulled out of the air as the guy who was running the computer division for the DMS, and he's mentioned in Patient Zero, and no one is mentioned for sure in Dragon Factory. Bug is in there, but he's like not much of a character. It's King of Plagues where Bug becomes a main character, and now he's so entrenched in the Joe Ledger world, it really surprised me. But luckily, also, my assistant and a woman named Mary Adkins teamed up a while ago to do the Joe Ledger Companion, which is a nonfiction book that covers everything up to about Deep Silence, like pretty much the whole DMS era. I consult that book a lot now.
Yeah. Like your Bible for going back.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's a Joe Ledger wiki now, which I didn't know there was until about a few months ago, and I go look at that too. And there's also a Facebook page. It was the Ledgerverse. I think now it might be called the Maberry-verse, but it was the Ledgerverse for a while. And I just learned recently there's a whole bunch of subreddits and Discord, maybe Discord, chat boards talking about my books, and a lot of really interesting fan theories, which I didn't know about until Dr. Coleman, Ronald Coleman, who's my science advisor, who's also a character in the books. He's on them all the time.
Oh.
And I'm like, Are you betraying state secrets on that? He says, no. I said, I like basically dangling it in front of people. And people are always surprised he's a real person, but he's definitely a real person.
Do you ever have
So,
complications keeping like scars and like there's so many injuries if somebody gets hurt in something?
yeah. Joe Ledger should have as many scars on his body as I do because I've had just about as many injuries as he's had. From my whole life, I've got knife wounds all over me and ice pick wounds in my stomach from bodyguard work, a big scar on my shoulder from meat cleaver. I've got all that, that stuff from bodyguard and bouncing work. And a lot of Joe's injuries kind of mirror some of mine, though he has gunshot wounds and I've never been shot. Shot at twice, but never shot. But Joe has been shot. But I've never cataloged all his wounds.
Yeah.
But it's going to be, pretty soon I'm going to get to that point where he's going to start waking up in the morning and having to, get his body moving properly, and start thinking about whether it's time to retire, which of course I'm not going to let him do.
Good.
He's aging in what I call comic book time. You figure in Fantastic Four, Franklin Richards, the son of Sue and Reed, was born in 1968 and he's still 6 years old. So I like comic book aging patterns. It's really useful.
I think I'm gonna go back and start over after finishing this. I'll start making a log of when Joe gets hurt and just note the scar, the weapon, the location.
Well, the easiest way is to check the epilogues because that usually, he's in the hospital getting repaired.
Yeah.
I mean, Burn to Shine, he was a mess. Everybody was a mess at the end of Burn to Shine.
Yeah.
I think that Santoro fight messed him up.
The Santoro fight was fun.
That was a good one.
That Santoro fight was very close to a real fight I had, though I didn't kill the guy. But I had a really brutal fight with a guy with a knife once when I was a bodyguard. And a lot of that played into that last fight with Joe and Santoro.
Has Joe killed anyone with a meat cleaver yet?
Nope.
No, but he did have to choose what size knife for cutting off a certain aspect of a person with crow.
Yeah.
And Burn to Shine.
Yeah.
The choice of which knife to use was pretty comical.
Well, Crow, of course, is based partly on me, like what my life might have been had I solved my problems by getting into drink, and I didn't. He did, but his childhood is similar in some ways to mine, and he's really good with a katana, and so am I. I've been doing kenjutsu for 59 years now, I think. But I'm a small knife fighter. The Wilson rapid release knife used to be Joe's knife. They no longer make it. So now Night Watch Knives is making a legitimate Joe Ledger knife. It's fixed blade Joe Ledger knife. And I have one.
And when are those available to the public?
They're available now. Go to Night Watch Knives.
Awesome.
Pick with a K.
Night Watch.
And
Mother's Day coming up.
Yeah. No, reach out to him. He hand makes each knife. The guy who owns is a knife smith, and he's thanked in the acknowledgments page, I believe, in this book, if I'm not mistaken, because he makes superb knives. And let's see, is he in here? Yes, Alex Harrison of Night Watch Knives. It is Night without a K. I thought it was Kagen, but it's not. It's just Night. But it's in the acknowledgments page, which is in the back of the book, so you can look him up and go find his company. Reasonably priced for the level of craftsmanship.
Yeah, we'll all end up having one.
Yeah,
here pretty soon, I'm sure.
Step 1, buy the book. Step 2, buy the knife.
Ray brought his to the signing we did in Orange County last week or 2 weeks ago. He had him with him.
The audiobook.
Yeah. So listen, I do have to run soon, but this has been fun. I can talk to you guys all day long.
Oh, you're fantastic. We really appreciate you.
Have you guys ever come into Dragon Con?
So I was kind of waiting on hearing back from Cherry, but I'm ready to do all of that stuff. When are you?
I'm definitely going this year at Dragon Con for sure.
Okay.
And she lives in Atlanta, Cherry, so she'll probably show up. We'll probably have dinner or something. If you're there, come and join us because she likes going out with a bunch of people, her clients, and even though I'm not one of her clients, about half the people that she represents are people that I've kind of nudged in her direction because I like her, her effectiveness and so on.
We might be there.
Yeah, That'd be cool. Love to meet you guys in person and hang out.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That'd be
of course.
great.
I got to figure feeling the off-camera conversations will get a little weird.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely.
Great ways. So yeah.
We're barely holding it together here right now.
Well, listen, guys, this has been a whole bunch of fun, and I really appreciate coming back on. And I want to come back once I can be able to drop the big news that I'm sitting on right now, because
Yes.
I'm waiting for confirmation from some folks on something. And there are a couple of things that would be fun to come back and talk about once I can.
We would love that.
Yeah, we'll use Sharpie. There's no penciling that one in.
Yeah, and actually, if somewhere probably in late summer, I'll have the advanced reading copies of Red Empire. You know, if you ask real nice, you can get a copy of that. Just saying.
Okay.
All right.
Share with your friends. Just saying.
Notes taken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
How many times can we read it?
it's a fun book. You know, unlike the other books, which have maybe a dozen interludes, it says 50 or 49. So it's a lot of backstory and a lot of fun, weird shit goes on in that book.
Oh man, I'm excited.
Can't wait.
Yeah, this is gonna be awesome, man. Fantastic talking to you again. Always is, and you know, the minute Rob and you got it on the schedule, Ryan and I were super stoked. So this was great.
Well, you guys are fantastic, and you know, I feel like I've known you guys a lot longer than I have. You know, so I want to hang out more. So you know, please invite me back.
Yeah, we would love to
Absolutely.
have you back. We'll shout at you, and we'll also let you know about Dragon Con.
Well, and any other cons you're doing, let me know, because you know, I'm doing a bunch this year. I'm doing Fan Fusion, Super. If you guys ever want to go to San Diego Comic-Con, I can set you up with 4-day pro badges.
We do.
Yes.
Now, you're on your own for hotel and air, but I can get you 4-day pro badges. That's not a problem.
We're in.
Yeah.
My wife will have to eat that one and just say, "Okay, you're doing it."
And since you're somebody who's likely to have an agent who is going to represent you, it would be a business expense.
Well, there you go. 100%.
Taxes, man. All right, guys, this has been fun. I'm gonna bag out here, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
Yeah. Thank you so
Yeah,
much,
thank you.
and congratulations again. Burn to Shine. Out. It's out.
Go get it, read it, all of it.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Take care.
Are we recording?